Good morning, everybody. On behalf of the BDV project to this webinar. First of all, I hope you are all doing well in these difficult months that are difficult for everybody. Today, we have the pleasure of having 4 speakers from the i3 Market project who are going to present some of the key aspects related to the creation of a smart data ecosystem, which are trust, security, and privacy. They will provide a few hints on what is being developed in the scope of the i3 Market project, a project that, as you may know, is developing open source software to facilitate the federation of data marketplaces in a trustworthy, secure, and privacy-preserving manner. But before I give the floor to our speakers, allow me to say a few words about the logistics of the webinar. First of all, if you are interested in topics related to big data and analytics, please go regularly to our webinar webpage, which is shown at the bottom of the slide. In these URLs, you will find more information about future webinars, as well as links to all the previous recordings and slides. Please, if you have any questions, use the question chat provided by the tool. And we will, at the end of the presentation, ask the speakers your questions and they will answer. Right at the end of the webinar, you will be directed to a very brief survey to get your feedback and recommendations. But now I'm going to ask you a couple of short questions in the form of an online poll to check the audience and your background and main interest of feedback to our speakers. So allow me to launch the first question. Okay, I'm launching it now. The first question is about your profile. So please let us know if you are from an academic or an industrial organization. I give you a few more seconds. I see that you are answering now. So let's wait for 10 more seconds and then I will stop the poll and tell you the results. Okay, I'm closing the poll. I see that you're answering. I'm closing the poll now. So apparently there are 41% of people belonging to academic institutions, 32% to large industries, and 18% to startups or SMEs, and also 9% to other type of industries. I think this is a valuable information also for our speakers. And the second poll that I'm launching as we speak is about the subject of this particular webinar. So you can select here multiple answers, not just one. So are you using or managing data marketplaces or data sharing platforms? And you have 4 different answers. So please select the answers that you think that are most likely to explain your relation with data platforms and data marketplaces. So I see that you're answering. Let's wait a few more seconds. Okay, so I'm closing the poll in 2 more seconds because I see that some people are still answering. Okay, I'm closing now. So apparently 24% of the people answered that they are managing data marketplaces or data platforms, 12% that they are consumers. Apparently nobody is a data provider here. Most of the people, 68%, are just interested in the topic. So they are not really using so far or providing data to data platforms or data marketplaces. So thank you for the answers. So let's resume then the presentation. And the last slide I have before giving the floor to the speakers is just to introduce the agenda from today. So first of all, we have Vasiliki Koniakou from the Athens University of Economics and Business, and she is going to provide an overview of the i3 Market project and its contents. After that, we have Alessandro Amicone from GFT Italy. He will present the first of the 3 pillars for building a smart data ecosystem, which is trust. Aguiles Adjas from IDEMIA will present the second pillar, security. And last but not least, Juan Hernandez from the Polytechnic University of Catalonia will introduce key aspects around the third pillar, privacy. So without further delay, let me hand over to Vasiliki. So I'm going to give you presenter's rights as we speak. Okay, so you should have now the control. So Vasiliki, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the floor. Okay, let's make sure that everything is in place. So greetings everyone, and thank you for being here. As it was already mentioned, I am Vasiliki. I am a doctoral candidate of law in the University of Turku Faculty of Law, but I'm also a research fellow in the Athens Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And this gives me the very nice opportunity of working with very prestigious and leading experts on a project called i3 Market. And today I'm going to have the pleasure of introducing you to i3 Market. So what we're going to do for the next 15 minutes is first of all discuss big data and data marketplaces, focusing mainly on the challenges of trading data and the shift from big data to smart data. Then we're going to address data mobility and data transfer as two key objectives of the European Union and two focal points of the European Union digital agenda. And finally, we're going to talk a bit about trust, security, and privacy, not as legal requirements only, but as engineering values within the context of value-sensitive design, before I give the floor to my partners to talk to you about more interesting and technical stuff. So if you're here, you already know that data is very important. And although it is a commonplace, it is certainly not an exaggeration to claim that data are the oil of the 21st century. The amount of data, especially the last decade, has become increasingly big, and so it has its importance. The amount of available data has increased exponentially, and so has the reliance of companies on data, as they largely depend on internal and external data to innovate their products and services and improve their processes and overall performance. Now, awareness over the benefits of data and data analytics have led to a shift towards what we call data-driven strategies, as we are progressively moving towards a data-driven economy. Given that the advent of the ICT technologies now allow the collection, storage, processing, and then the dissemination of massive amounts of data, data trading is becoming a blooming business with a central role in the data-driven economy and the digital market. Whereas the practice of trading and selling data has existed for a relatively long time, until recently there have been no large-scale coordinated data trading mechanisms. Hence, data marketplaces are a relatively new business model that refers basically to the mediation service for data exchange. The concept is still fairly new and the definition is evolving. However, essentially what the data marketplace is a multi-sided platform where a digital intermediary allows data sellers and data buyers, as well as third parties, to come together and trade data and data-related services. There are several different models of data marketplaces: one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, or many-to-many. And their differences may also depend on the data sets they're selling, the business model they're following, the pricing system, the revenue model, the sector, the hosted data sets, the targeted audience, and so on and so forth. And whereas the market is largely dominated by mainly commercial and privately managed trading platforms, there is also space for free and open data sharing marketplaces. So obviously the data marketplace is blooming and it evolves dynamically, while in the shadows of the formal digital economy, there have always been, unfortunately, thriving marketplaces for stolen data. Most probably, I would need a couple of webinars and not just one to talk about the challenges related to data trading. However, today I'm going to summarize 6 main of them. 3 of them related to data as a product, and 3 of them related to the challenges that data marketplaces face. So even though data is ample and valuable, still there are significant challenges for trading data. Some of them relate to how data is as a product. Data assets as goods sold online may seem similar to any other product, but they are not. Data is quite different and it has different characteristics compared to tangible as well as intangible goods. As a non-tangible intermediary good that is produced with the intent of being then combined and transformed to create other information goods, data has some peculiar characteristics. The most significant one is that data are experience goods, which means that their value is not observable before consumption. Quality and verity of data can then be only evaluated by comparing its statistical properties against similar data sets. And that brings us to the second challenge, which is quantity versus quality. Even though we have huge amounts of data, data quality is still an ongoing issue. Regardless of the abundance of supply, when it comes to data requirements that concern regular updates and sufficient level of data quality, still we have a challenging task. And as data can be easily modified and tampered with, it may be difficult to ensure that the data is not fake, it's not modified, and guarantee its integrity across time. Finally, one big challenge comes from the attitude of companies towards sharing data. Currently, companies produce data for their own usage and then store it in data silos afterwards. This hinders secondary usage of data, depriving the ecosystem from potentially very valuable insights. Additionally, companies rarely trade industrial data sets on multilateral databases and data marketplaces. Moreover, data security, privacy, and data quality preservations remain very challenging, and the best way to go with data monetization and revenue optimization remain quite unclear. Now, let's move to the challenges that data marketplaces face, the first one being the legal uncertainty and the rough legal landscape. The situation with data ownership is far from clear, concise, and consistent across different jurisdictions. And this is very challenging for the large data marketplaces that wish to operate in different countries. The legal instruments that are nowadays available to protect data are rather old and not crafted with big data and data marketplaces in mind. They're not also applied consistently across different countries. Moreover, the form and the level of protection they may offer may be quite questionable. For example, databases are protected through a directive from 1996, whereas theoretically copyright may also apply. Copyright essentially protects only the cell. It means that it only protects the organization of data and not the data itself. So to remedy these challenges, legal scholars have proposed the introduction of specific data rights. However, designing such data protections in practice has proven quite difficult. As such, we are left with contract and licensing agreements as the key instruments. Then we come back to quality. So quality control is challenging for data marketplaces. When a user buys a physical product online, this product can then be returned or exchanged if the buyer is not happy. But the same does not apply to databases or data sets. Thus, one big challenge is ensuring data quality. However, privacy concern as well as verifying the data origins, which are central for quality control, may be quite difficult. And then we turn to the last set of big challenges, which is trust, security, and privacy, the topic of our today's webinar. So the fact that before the emergence of the organized data marketplaces, data exchange was primarily conducted through data brokers, whose methods of acquisition, processing, and transfer of data were not always transparent and legit, has created several issues. The first one being trust. Particularly the opaque methods followed by data brokers have created issues of transparency and trust, which creates obstacles to the ecosystem. Then we have security. Data is obviously valuable and high profitable. Creating a secure environment for data trade is of paramount significance for the market. It also crucially relates with trust, as formerly mentioned, and with privacy and data protection. And of course, one cannot overstate the centrality of privacy and data protection when it comes to data marketplaces, especially after the coming into force of the GDPR. Finally, as technology advances and data analytics progress, the needs of the markets also amplify, and the industry moves slowly from big data to smart data, namely data that is specific, filtered, processed, and analyzed, ready to be used upon collection. Usually the term smart data is associated with IoT, machine learning, and smart environments, but it essentially denotes data that is valid, filtered, well-defined, and ready to be acted upon. In turn, this means that we are also moving away from data marketplaces to marketplaces insights. The European Union is very well aware of these changes, and it's also very interested in these changes. The vision for a shared European digital data space is a key objective of the European Union and has gained prominence, especially during the last decades. Hence, the enhancement of data mobility and data transfer are among the top priorities of the European Union. With the aim to promote EU as a global leader and a role model for the digital economy, the EU data space and the digital single market for data are two key parts of the EU digital agenda. The aim is essentially to create a single European data space, open to data from across the world, in which, however, the EU law can enforce effectively, and all the data-related regulations of the European Union can also be applied. To that end, the European Union aims at establishing a digital single market for data that will enable and promote cross-sectoral data flows of quality data that will follow and respect the European Union standards of privacy and data protection and competition law and intellectual property law, of course. And finally, that it will apply fair, practical, and clear rules. So far, the European Union has introduced several pieces of legislation to that end. It has introduced a number of initiatives to become a more attractive, secure, and dynamic data economy, promoting the enhanced mobility of trusted data and enabling data transfer and augmented data flows across sectors and industries. The most noteworthy ones are obviously the regulation on the free flow of non-personal data and the Open Data Directive, the regulation that everyone loves to hate, the General Data Protection Regulation, the Cybersecurity Act, the Digital Content Directive, and the Directive on Contracts for the supply of digital content and services. There are also large-scale changes upcoming. The two most noteworthy ones are the Data Act and the Digital Service Act. The Digital Act is expected within 2021, and it's intended to foster business-to-government data sharing for the benefit of the public, support business-to-business data sharing, and in particular addressing issues related to usage rights when it comes to code-generated data, and clarify the rules for responsible use of data, evaluate the available intellectual property rights framework with a view to further enhance data access and use of data, and finally focus on ways to enhance interoperability, transparency, trust, security, and privacy in the context of data exchange and data trade. The other big change that we are expecting is the Digital Service Act, which is expected to introduce rules for all the digital platforms, including the platforms that focus on data trades. However, due to extensive disagreements and the lack of common ground, and a bit due to the coronavirus, whereas it was expected during this year, it's still unclear when it will be ready. And moving on to the final part of this presentation, trust, security, and privacy are commonly invoked as legal or social requirements. However, apart from challenges for data marketplaces and legal requirements, trust, security, and privacy may also serve as central engineering values according to the value-sensitive design theory. Embracing the idea that design embodies and reflects choices and values, essentially what VSD suggests is that in terms of responsible engineering and responsible innovation, such central societal and legal values can be translated into design and actually shape design choices. Particularly privacy and security have gained momentum also due to the GDPR and the advent of legal protections by design, but trust is also gaining prominence. So what value-sensitive design essentially promotes is, instead of reactively seeking to comply with legal requirements such as trust, security, and privacy, to proactively design them within the technologies, having them as values and principles of engineering. And how this can happen, I guess that my colleagues will explain you. So without undue delay, I will now leave the floor for Alessandro to go on. Thank you.
Could you see my screen?
Yes, not in
Okay.
presenting mode, but we can see it.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Alessandro Micone. I'm a project manager of the innovation unit from GFT Italy. It's okay now? Okay. As we saw in the previous presentation from Vasiliki, trust, security, and privacy are the main challenges in data management and data trading, but they are also three pillars for building a smart data ecosystem. In the next slides, after a brief introduction about the iFree Market project, we will see how this project is approaching these topics in order to provide the necessary level of trust, security, and privacy, and promote data mobility and the born of new opportunities and business models for the data economy. iFree Market project aimed to create a network between data marketplaces from different countries and businesses, providing a backplane, a decentralized backplane, with the necessary level of trust, security, and privacy, and with special attention to the management of sensitive data assets. To do this, iFree Market leverages the blockchain technologies to provide the trust, security, and privacy features to the network, to connect the network. This is a crucial step in the roadmap from the big data economy to the smart data economy, because it provides the conditions to create the network between different contexts of data, and provide more meaningful data to analytics tools. In this webinar, we put our attention to the security, privacy, and trust aspects of the project. First of all, we should define better the concept of trust. When we trust someone or something, for example, if it's trusted by someone that we trust, or if it's open and transparent, and also if it's secure and reliable, and finally, if we can control or influence it. And what should we trust in to join an ecosystem? The governance of the system, for example, providing a consensus-based governance, the transactions recorded in the system, and we can achieve this providing a tamper-proof ledger, the identity of the other stakeholder of the systems, and we can achieve this with verifiable credentials, and the accounting of, for example, data exchanges or payments in the system, and we can achieve this with a non-repudiation protocol. And we can see in the next slides more details about these features. Blockchain technology could provide these useful features for our ecosystem because it provides a tamper-proof ledger distributed over all the nodes of the network. And this ledger is tamper-proof because the transactions are recorded in a chain of related block, and a malicious attack could be avoided and blocked because it surely would broken the chain integrity, and so it could be discovered by the other nodes of the network. It provides a consensus-based governance because all the change in the system must be approved verified and approved by all the nodes of the network. And provides cryptographic keys with which all the transactions are signed, and which this provides security and reliability, and all these features provide also the basis for the management of for the providing of the other two features of the system: the verifiable credentials, with which are tamper-evident credentials that could be cryptographically verified by all the stakeholders by itself, and the non-repudiation protocol, in which with which the stakeholder could communicate in a peer-to-peer manner for data exchanges and payments, and provide cryptographically signed proofs that will not be repudiated by the stakeholder itself. What are verifiable credentials? Verifiable credentials are pieces of data that are issued and cryptographically signed by the trusted stakeholder of the network. In this case, we have data marketplace, which are the trusted stakeholder of the network, that are have verifiable credentials itself, and can issue verifiable credential to the other stakeholder, for example, data provider. And another data marketplace could provide and issue a verifiable credential to a data consumer, and this credential could be presented between the stakeholders and verified in a verifiable data registry, in which are recorded the cryptographically proof associated to the issuers of the network. This is very important because permits to identify each of the stakeholders, even if not involving the issuer, but verify themselves the credentials. The non-repudiation protocol is used during the communication between, for example, data provider and data consumer in a data exchange, for example, and the data provider could provide a proof of origin of the data exchange with all the information related with the exchange of data. The provider, the consumer towards the data are provided, a description, and also commitment about the data provider and the secret used to encrypt the data. So the data provider could provide encrypted data to the data consumer with some proof about the data and the secret used to encrypt the data, and cryptographically signed with his key. The data consumer could validate this information and store this information to verify, after receiving the data, the proof, the commitment provided by the data provider. After receiving the data, the data consumer should provide a proof of reception to the data provider, and then the data provider, after validating the proof of reception of the data, could provide the secret to encrypt the data to the data consumer, and he should provide the secret in the public blockchain, so the data consumer could retrieve this secret by itself. And after this, the data provider could create a proof of this secret and registrate all this proof related to the identifier of this transaction, of this data transfer, in the Auditable Accounting registry, which could be accessed after the data exchange both by the data provider and the data consumer, to verify all the proof of the data exchange and to manage, eventually manage some conflict between data provider and data consumer about a specific data exchange. Then I pass the control to Achilles for the security part.
Thank you, Alessandro. Okay, can you see my screen? Is it visible for everyone?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Ailes Adjaz. I'm a program manager within IDEMIA, and I'm in charge of innovative project within the company. So before talking about the security, let's recall all together the blockchain basics. So we have users that own assets in the blockchain. So these users, when they want to change the state of these assets or the ownership of this asset, they create what we call transactions. And in order to prove their ownership, they perform what we call cryptographic signatures. And then these transactions are sent to the network. Nodes on the network will validate each transactions, and miners will create blocks, and these blocks are sent then and submitted to other nodes. Then, thanks to a consensus mechanism, the block can be either accepted or rejected. So as you are aware, in the blockchain world, so we are relying on secure consensus protocol like proof of work, proof of stake, proof of elapsed time, horizontal fault tolerant and its variants. We are also relying on state-of-the-art cryptography, elliptic curves, verifiable credentials, and things like that. But all of this security relies on one strong assumption, which is that the key is safely and securely stored. So if, for example, you have a super secure door and then you hide your key behind a doormat, then all your security collapses. And unfortunately, that's what we have today in practice. So we are hearing on the news every day frauds on crypto assets and hackers stealing keys. And this is due to the fact that they got access to the keys of the user, so they were able to change the state of these assets or these cryptocurrencies. So in the I3 market, what we are proposing is to have a hardware wallet which will rely on a secure element. So for those of you who are not familiar with this term, so it's tamper-resistant hardware platform, which has an security evaluation of EAL 5+ on common criteria. And this secure element is capable of securely hosting and storing applications and keys against software or hardware attacks, which means that even if the attacker has access to the wallet, he will not be able to retrieve any keys or any sensitive data from it. And this secure element will, of course, provide cryptographic functionalities like signatures, encryption, and decryption functionalities. But the most important thing is that this hardware wallet or this secure element will be blockchain compatible, which means that it will support blockchain cryptographic algorithms, which are different from the one that we may find in the payment industry or in the telco industry. But in addition to that, it will also support an HD wallet or hierarchical deterministic wallet, which is an implementation of BIP32 and BIP44 specification. And this allows from a master, let's say, wallet to derive different, or master seed, to derive different wallets depending on the blockchain, the account, or the assets that the user use. And in terms of form factors, we may have two types of form factors. The first one, which is the standard smart card or payment card form factor. And in this case, in order to use his wallet, the user, for example, with his smartphone, can only just tap his smartphone against his card or his wallet against his smartphone, and thanks to NFC, he will be able to sign his transactions. And the second type of form factor is the SIM form factor. And in this case, in order to use his wallet, so the usage of the wallet is very transparent to the user, but the keys is safely stored in a secure element. And as you're aware, in order to have a secure authentication, we need to have at least 2 authentication factors. And the first one, which is the possession of the wallet. The second one can be traditionally it is the PIN. And in addition to that, what we are proposing is to have a third authentication factor, which will be the biometry. So the user will be able to unlock his key thanks to its biometry. So, and the biometry can be, like, depending on the form factor, the biometry can be either the fingerprint of the user or the face of the user. So having said that, so I think that's all from my side. So if you have any question, do not hesitate to ask them during the Q&A session. And now I leave the floor to my partner, Juan. Thank you.
Okay, can you see my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Juan Hernández Serrano from the Technical University of Catalonia. I'm associate professor there, and my area of expertise is network security protocols and privacy. And I'm here to explain you the privacy approach in the IT market project in order to meet the GDPR requirements. So basically, and summarizing, there are a lot of requirements regarding the general data protection regulation, but the one that could affect more the technology we choose are, in our opinion, these 5 here. Besides, everything will be private by design, obviously, and secure by design. And we have the concept, the very important concept of data minimization, the GDPR. Data minimization, in short, advise you to not store data that you do not actually need. Okay, so if you do not need this data, just delete it or not store it at all. Okay, obviously, sometimes you need to store data, and when this data is related to subject or people, actual people, probably you need this, and this is also, the GDPR is very specific about it. You need explicit user consent for storing his or her data and to process it. Okay, and obviously this data is probably going across your borders, so you need to secure transfer this data across borders. And besides all of this, you need to have a strong accounting mechanism so that your organization can be audited and your operations can be properly audited. Okay, so in order to meet these 5 requirements, beside state-of-the-art security, that is to say end-to-end encryption, authentication, authorization, and so on, we built privacy upon 3 main I3 market systems pilots. That is self-sovereign identities. Okay, and we will see that using self-sovereign identities as key in order to meet data minimization, user consent, and privacy by design. Okay, we have another module, specific system for explicit user consent. And it's not only meeting the user consent requirement, but also the secure data transfers, because I3 market will not allow any operation without the proper user consent. Okay, And finally, we have created this a reliable accounting system, okay, that can account everything that is performed in our system in a private way, but it can be used as proof to support claims in future or as proof to support audits. Okay, so let me go through the three of them a little bit. Okay, let us start explaining why we consider self-sovereign identities a key concept for privacy. So basically today, people has a lot of identities. We don't have one identity on the network, but a bunch of identities with a lot of different organizations. Okay, we have an account with Google, with Facebook, with GitHub, with Twitter, with many different organizations, and we store our credentials and other sensitive information there. Okay, in the end, these are gold mines for hackers who can find a lot of opportunities to steal sensitive data. And as we have to manage a lot of different passwords, and we cannot have different passwords for every site, we're probably reusing a lot of passwords. We probably all do. So basically, if one organization is weak, the hacker can get credentials from you and then access other organizations and steal a lot of sensitive information. So it is very bad for security and your privacy. Okay, but it's not only an issue for security and privacy. It's also an issue for usefulness. I mean, as a user, you don't have control over your identity. You have multiple identities, in fact, because you sign up in a lot of different organizations. So updating, for example, your email account in all the organizations could be a very painful process. Okay, so obviously currently there are some solutions that could partially solve the problem. Okay, most of them based on what is called federated authentication. You are familiar with it, probably signing with Google, signing with Facebook, and so on. Okay, this is patching the problem somehow, because now the identity providers allows system administrator to not need to store credentials. I mean, you can just rely on the login with Google. So this is good for system administrator, but it's still an issue for users, okay? Because external identity providers still manage user identities, okay? So for example, if you have a conflict with Google, Google could ban you, okay? This is censorship. And the problem could get worse in terms of privacy. I mean, when you're using external identity providers has a lot of information about what you're doing, can actually profile everything you do, because they know where are you logging to, what is the purpose, probably based on the scope, and when are you logging. So it's very bad for privacy, and in fact this fact prevents the use of this kind of technology for some use cases like healthcare, where privacy is a must. So this couldn't be the solution, and we think that the solution is to give control of their identities back to the users themselves. Okay, so that the users can have a stable identifier that is created and managed by themselves and not by anyone else, and they could have control about the interactions with their identity data or sensitive data in a centralized way, but centralized on the users themselves. So let me explain this a little bit. Okay, so basically the main concept or the main topic, the main purpose of self-sovereign identity is to give this control back to the user. So in the end, it's going to be very similar to what we do in the real world. I mean, as previously explained by Alessandro and Aguiles, I mean, we can, and in the digital world, we can have an identity. It's very easy to have an identity, and the way of having the simplest way to have an identity is just to register a public key. When you have a public key, you can always prove ownership with its complementary private key. Okay, and this private key can be stored in your wallet. So at any time, you can prove the ownership of a given public key. So this is, at the very least, one identity. And then you can go to credential issuers. Okay, so for example, my government could say that I am a Spanish citizen. Okay, and I can have a credential about this. Or this credential in the example, we have a data marketplace that could issue credentials for me. So he can say that this subject that is my public key, that is owned by me, has this role in the marketplace, and this is called Mario Rossi and it's from Italy and so on. So we can have these credentials around, and we can present these credentials everywhere so that they are verified. Okay, this everything is supported by the blockchain, because I mean, we can have a we can publish our public key in a blockchain, and it could be verified in a blockchain, and we don't need an external identity provider, a trusted centralized organization in order to manage our identity. Okay, our credentials would be as valid as the people trust the issuers. So when I have a credential saying that I am a network engineer, this credential is issued by my university, and it is valid if the people trust my university as in the real world. Okay, so basically we can have a local storage of verifiable credentials that can be verified using the blockchain. We're using decentralized ID technology. Okay, and all the verifications can be performed using a blockchain. In our case, it's going to be Ethereum or Ethereum Bezel in the beginning. Okay, so the good point about this is that then we can release credentials in a selective manner. So ideally, a credential, we have only one claim. Claim are just specific things about your identity. For example, role will be a claim, name would be a claim, surname would be another claim. Okay, so ideally we could have credentials with just one claim, so that when someone asks for some credential, we can just prove that we have this claim without releasing the rest of the information. Okay, if you just need to know that I am a valid data owner of your marketplace, why should you know that I'm Mario Rossi from Italy and so on, if it is not strictly required? Okay, this is ideally, but using zero knowledge proof, we can even have credentials, big credentials, like for example, you can have an ID card, and probably your ID card says your name, surname, place of birth, date of birth, and some other country and some other data, and then you can selectively disclose only one or two claims or three. Okay, this is provided thanks to this zero knowledge protocols that we can use, and we can go even further. I mean, for example, if someone requests my role, my age in my country, probably the age is only related to demonstrate that I am an adult. So we can also do things like demonstrating or proving that we are over 18 without disclosing our actual age. This is so nice, and we can do this thanks to this DOD's verifiable credentials and zero knowledge proofs. Okay, so now we can even define a way to verify our credentials. A DID, a distributed identifier, it is resolved in somewhere, and this somewhere is here. This is resolved, for example, in a blockchain. So the data provider can go to the blockchain and find a centralized place to verify the different things. So for example, we can have endpoints releasing specific data there. Okay, so if we update our email, a data provider can go there and see the updated email, but the data provider does not need to store my email. So if I have, I will not need to update all my data everywhere. I keep all my data with me under my control, backed up on the blockchain. Okay, and then all the different organizations or servers can just go there and check it real time, and they don't need to store it, which is so nice. So this is very convenient for users. But the thing is that sovereign identity is also very, very convenient for administrators or organizations themselves. Okay, so basically, if they do not need to store personal data, this data cannot be leaked out. There's no data breach. And we are meeting the GDPR requirement about data minimization. And in fact, this is also less cost for us. If we don't need to store sensitive data about users. We just need to check it real time. Okay, and the user can have them under control and in a secure way. So this is quite good, and it's the basis to meet these two requirements. Okay, so this is the first pillar, self-sovereign identity. Okay, and basically we have also built the second pillar is a system for explicit user consent. The GDPR is very specific about this. I mean, every data subject has to consent processing of his or her personal data, and it should have the right also to withdraw the consent at any time. So basically, we continue using verifiable credentials, as we have explained before. I mean, you as a data subject, I can issue a verifiable credential for a data provider, for example, explicitly stating that I allow to sell my data or to process my data under certain conditions. Okay, so this consent can be very, very easily verified, but it cannot be faked or mangled. Okay, and I3 market operation, this is quite good, can check all the necessary consents in every data exchange so that no operation will be allowed without this. So that is quite good for the user themselves, that can be confident that the data is only sold or processed or distributed under the agreed conditions. Okay, obviously we have also implemented, or we are on the process of implementing a revocation system for the verifiable claims. And this is based because if a claim can be verified on a blockchain, we can just update where our decentralized identifier points so that it no longer consents something. So this is our approach to explicit user consent. And let me go to the last one, to the last pillar, that is auditable accounting. Okay, in I3 market, we have a reliable accounting system that is backed up by the blockchain once again. Okay, and the idea is that we account or we log selected operations like access modification, deletion of sensitive or personal data. Okay, so it can be later checked who was accessing the data, who was modifying, or who was deleting the data, and this could be a proof in for example, in a claim in future trial. Okay, and we can also store in payment data. Okay, and this is quite important for proper billing. Okay, or for when you're doing billing, you have a reliable accounting of the data exchange. And with non-repudiation protocol that Alessandro previously introduced, none of the stakeholders can repudiate an action in the protocol. So the bill will be fair or based on what it actually happened. Okay, and we are also counting, for example, contractual agreements. Okay, so that no one can say in the future that the agreement that agreement wasn't as it was stated to be or agreed to be. Okay, so these are proofs. I mean, what we're storing in the blockchain, obviously, blockchain is a public thing. So it's not something that is giving any information about the exchange itself. It's just proofs that can be used to later prove that something happened based on stored signed actions. Okay, and this is in the end key for our payment systems to keep user consent in place so that no one does nothing unlawfully, and in general to support any potential trial because of a data breach and so on. And these are the three main pillars. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to question them. I'll give the ball back to Tomás.
Yeah, you can keep the slide if you like. Yeah, we are now in the Q&A session. Thank you very much to all the presenters. I think the presentation were very good, and and it rates at least one question so far. So I remember that remind you that you can write the questions in the chat if you have another question. We have already a question from Stefanos Venios, and he's asking if we can discuss a bit about distributed ledger technologies that we are considering in the project or using in the project in order to bypass the low transaction rate. Commonly is a problem for public blockchain solutions. So I don't know who would like to take this question.
But for example, please, Juan.
I'm not a legal expert here, but in fact we have like two layers of distributed ledgers. So we're internally using a permission that could be private, could be a private ledger. So we don't have this a specific issue there. And then we're using public blockchains for reliability. I mean, we need to store things in a network that is not controlled by us, so that it can be verified by anyone. But these proofs are not leaking any information of what is actually happening without some private data that we store. So I would say that it shouldn't be an issue, a legal issue. I don't know if this answers your question.
I think the question was more in the sense that how to bypass this low transaction rate, which is a problem in some public blockchains. So the problem about the performance.
Right. Sorry, let me check. I can see the question itself written, but
yeah,
what do you mean when you say law is small or based on laws?
No. Low transaction rate, not low from small, not from low. Not from legal.
However,
okay, I mean,
the idea is to create to create the network not on the public blockchain, but to create a permissioned or private blockchain between all the data marketplace, all the participants in the network, and use the public blockchain to record the public secret for data encryption, for data decryption, for example, or to make the payment through the token exchange, for example, but only in particularly moment, particularly features in the network.
Okay, and have you selected a particular blockchain already, or are you still thinking on which one to select?
But currently it's Hyperledger Besu. I mean, we have a permissioned Hyperledger Besu with a Byzantine-based consensus, so that is no transaction cost. And then there are some proofs that are periodically stored on a public blockchain that we need for the auditable accounting and so on, but these are completely minimized. So
okay.
most of the operations in this vessel. Yeah.
And another features we can use to improve the transaction rate and reduce the cost of transaction in a public blockchain is the use of the non-repudiation protocol, or technologies like the state channels of payment channels, which permits to create a peer-to-peer communication between the stakeholders and the exchange of proof, and record to the public blockchain only the result of this communication, of this exchange of messages, of proofs, and so we interact with the public blockchain also at the end of the interaction between the stakeholders, and with only one transaction.
And just to add something to what have been said until now, so when we are relying on a BFT protocol, or Basel protocol, so there is no issue of low rate of transaction because the transactions are immediately accepted, but not like in Bitcoin or Ethereum, we need to wait 6 or 7 blocks in order to be sure that transaction is accepted.
Okay, thank you. I think that also answers the last question from Stefanos. He was asking exactly that if, for instance, we have like 10,000 payments per minute, what can happen in that case?
So yeah, it's not the issue with the BFT.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think we are reaching our expected time, so it's 12. So I think that all the presentations were very interesting. I think this is a very interesting project also to follow. Remember that this is a data platform project. There are several other data platforms, but this one is trying to federate several data marketplaces, which is something very interesting also. So I encourage you to go to the i3 Market website and check the latest results. And as I said at the beginning, this recording and the slides of the webinar will be posted into the URL that you will receive tomorrow again, because tomorrow the webinar tool will send that automatic email to all of you with the information about this webinar. So you will receive by email this URL. You don't have to know it by heart. So tomorrow you will have the possibility to connect and check the slides. For the recording, it might take a few more days, but because we have to edit it. But in principle, in a couple of days, probably by Monday or Tuesday next week, you will have all the materials. So I don't know if someone of you would like to say a few more words before leaving. If not, I will thank you, all the presenters, and also the people attending to the webinar. And stay safe, and let's continue with this BDV webinar series that this month we will have more. And remember that at the beginning of November, the first week of November, there is this European Big Data Value Forum 2020, where many projects, I think Market among them, are presenting their work, and there are very interesting talks, and it's free, so you can always register. So remember that. Thank you very much, and have a good day and a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye to everybody.
Mm-hmm.